Hello, it's me, and get ready for a ramble as usual because, as always, I want to make a video, but then it's like I have one idea, but then I kind of go off into just rambling. So, welcome. So, I have been thinking a lot about Nivan lately. She's usually never far from a mine because she's like in my inner circle of goddesses that I work with. Um, But Nivan, I made a video about 4 years ago about Nivan, and I will link it below because in that video I actually talk about who she is, how I came to see her, etc. But she's a Celtic goddess, short version, and she's associated with the Morrigan a lot. So you get the gist. uh, so anywho, I've just been thinking about lately that we're we're into winter now, right? In the northern hemisphere. I realize that doesn't apply to anyone below the equator, but um, we're moving into winter, which is my favorite time of year, when I feel the most alive and happy and just full of energy and joy, which I know is like completely opposite and backwards. But I know that a lot of people in the winter really go into the shadow side of themselves, um, in a negative way. And I think that in our path, as magical thinking people, I think we've been taught to shy away from shadow work, um, which is wild because I feel like that's like in the foundations of our path is embracing the darkness and the light. But um, we live in such a time where I think that paganism and the greater like new age movement and things like that have really told us to focus on the light, hold on to the light, celebrate the light, grow the light, and kind of ignore the darkness because you need to focus on the light. And I really disagree with that ideology. I don't think that's healthy at all. Um, and I think some people don't know how to embrace or to work with or acknowledge their pain, and their anger and their sadness in a healthy way without it controlling them. Um, I mean, I know I used to feel that way. Like, if I were to even acknowledge that I was sad about something, I was afraid that the sadness would just consume me and I would drown in it and not be able to come back out of it. And I think that's our gut reaction to a lot of negative emotions. Um, I actually made a couple of videos about negative emotions as well, like disgust, uh, several, and I'll link those below as well because I think they're very good. They're very good, but they explain really my points on those things. But um, I think that we as a magical community need to get back to acknowledging and working with our darkness, our shadow sides. I think one way to do that is to personify your shadow side. And that's something I did very early on in my path. I gave him a name and a face. He even had his own spirit animal that kind of was in his visual persona. Uh, and I'll share that with you. Um, I call my shadow side Evan, and he is a human, but who looks like me, obviously, but is very anthropomorphic a little bit with a raccoon. So he's got like the mask, and he has claws and crazy teeth, and he has the raccoon tail. And that's just me. You can visualize that your shadow side however you want. It doesn't have to be a person. It's imagination. Come on, you can do whatever you want. But yeah. And he had like his own pocket kind of dimension that he lived in, that I could go and visit astrally. And it was really cathartic for me to be able to do that, to personify my my pain and my negativity, my hatefulness, my anger, my sadness, my fear, my anxiety, all of it into one person. That was not me. That was like someone outside of me, but was me. It was this aspect of me that was all bleh and all bad. And being able to like remove myself from those emotions and look at them outside of myself helped me identify my feelings, acknowledge my feelings, work through my feelings, because then I was able to talk to another person who had all of the same feelings that I did and listen to them and work through them. Or some of them would just toss them outright. You're like, well, that sounds stupid when I hear it from someone else. Like, but that's one way to work with your pain, I think, in a safe way. Another is to, I think, work with gods and goddesses or spirits that are typically preside over negativity. So for me, that was Nemain. But I mean, you can do it with any shadow gods, and there's a lot. Underworld gods. I mean, there's a ton. You guys know. And if you don't, you can just Google. It's really easy. But I think working with them can be very cathartic. And it doesn't even have to be so dark and serious. Like, you don't have to be like, well, okay, I'm working with Hades. Although I'd recommend that. Hades is awesome. But it can be something simple, you know, like I'm gonna work with a goblin. I'm gonna work with goblin energy because goblins are always seen as like grotesque and negative creatures as opposed to like elves. Working with goblins, and I say that because I work with goblins, but that can be so empowering and wonderful and I think I was about to make up a word. Transmutative. It can help you transmute that energy into something else. My point is, don't be afraid to work with bad things or with dark energy. It really can be so cathartic. Since I'm beside my bookshelf, I'll show you a couple books that helped me do that. Here is one in particular that's really good. Ugh. I've talked about this book a bajillion times. I keep hitting my elbow. It is The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft by Christopher Penczak. It's a really good book. If you've been around, I think probably in the magical community for a while, you've probably heard of these. There's 4 of them, one for each element. This is the water book. But yes, The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft, Shadows, Spirits, and the Healing Journey. It's phenomenal. If you're someone who likes to work off of someone else's structure, this book is great because he gives you so many different guided meditations, spells, to do to help you find your shadow side, to personify it. He has like a going to the underworld meditation. It's fantastic. He talks about spirit animals, ways to find your spirit animals, spirit plants. It's a really, really, really good book. Oh, and this is kind of random, but I just appreciate this. Whenever people talk about spirit plants, I think you kind of get into some dangerous territory because, you know, some plants are extremely toxic and you need to know what you're doing. But he talks about that in this as well. Like if you know that you're going to work with a dark spirit, right, plant, which is kind of the point of what I'm talking about, like mistletoe, which is very poisonous to a human. He talks about safe ways to do that, which obviously would be not ingesting it. But it's great. It's a really, really good book, and I really can't recommend it enough. It's phenomenal. The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft, really good. Helped me so much with dealing with the pain of my childhood. So, another one is this one, which is, I've talked about it as well. Celtic Lore and Spellcraft of the Dark Goddess. I know a lot of us are drawn to goddesses more than gods in this path, so this is a very good book for you. It does mostly work off the basis of the Morrigan as the Dark Goddess, but you know, the Morrigan has so many aspects, and some of them are so different from each other, that you can work with any aspect of the Morrigan and feel like you're working with a totally different deity. Like, well, you are, but you know what I mean. totally different energy. It's very empowering. But I would definitely give this one a work through too. If you're interested in Celtic magic, Celtic mythology, powerful women who don't give a fuck, this book is for you. And then also there is a book that I gave away, but I'm constantly rebuying it, called Gothcraft. So if you're into like goth, punk, alternative stuff, that book is great. Gothcraft. It's phenomenal. And it talks about very unconventional ways to work with your shadow side, which might be controversial for some people. So I'm not even going to name it here because it could be very triggering. But Gothcraft, it's really good. Really good. It gets into some very deep, dark psychological things, and it's empowering to read about. But there's several. God, there's so many. But I enjoy shadow work, and I don't shy from it. So I love to talk about it, and I could probably talk about it forever in circles. But I'll wrap it up. But yes, don't be. Oh, did you see what I did there? Oh, bow. Anyway, don't be afraid to embrace your shadow. Talk to your shadow. Acknowledge it. A lot of the pain you feel kind of dissipates the minute you kind of give it space to talk, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of like a whiny child. Like, it's constantly just like, I feel pain, I'm scared. And the minute you're like, okay, well, tell me about it. It kind of just shuts up, and it's like, what? Like, it's like your pain gets stage fright. Which is good sometimes, because it kind of makes it go away. Like, you've absolved it. And other times, it just makes you have to go dig for it deeper. But it's so cathartic when you do give yourself permission to be dark. Anywho, happy holidays. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.